Hello, fourth graders. Welcome to lesson 8.2, Multiples of Fractions. Please pause to write the lesson number and title in your notebook. Today's objective is I can write a product of a whole number and a fraction as a product of a whole number and a unit fraction. Please pause to write the lesson objective in your notebook. Let's begin by reading the Unlock the Problem together. It says, Jen is making 4 pans of baked ziti. For each pan, she needs 2/3 cup of cheese. Her measuring scoop is 1/3 cup of cheese. How many scoops does she need for the 4 pans? Well, let's use a model, a picture, to think about this. We need 4 times 2/3. So we look at our original number. She's making 4 pans, and each pan needs 2/3. So 4 times 2/3. So here's our picture. It's a rectangle split into thirds, and she's going to use 2 of those thirds, so they're colored orange. So 2/3 is really the same as, like we talked about yesterday, 1/3 plus 1/3. Or we can call it 2 times 1/3. That way we have a unit fraction that's pretty easy to deal with. So she's not making just 1 pan of baked ziti, she's making 4 pans. So here's our model below. We have 4 pans. So we have 4 pans, and each one is split into thirds. In our first pan, we have 1/3 and 1/3. So 2 times 1/3, or 2/3. Now we have 1/3 and 1/3. Now if we look at the total number of thirds, then we have 2 times 2, because there's 2 in each one, and we have 2 pans, times 1/3, which is the same as 4 times 1/3, which is how many thirds we have, 4 thirds. So we call that 4 thirds. Now in our third pan, we have 2 more thirds. So now we have 3 pans that each have 2 thirds in them, and 3 times 2 is 6. So we have 6 1/3, or 6 thirds. And lastly, here's 2 more 1/3, 1/3. Now we have 4 pans that each have 2 thirds. So that's 4 times 2 is 8 pieces that are each 1/3, or we have 8 thirds. So 4 times 1/3 is the same as saying 4 pans times 2 1/3s in each pan, which gives me 8. 2 times 4 is 8 times 1/3, which gives me 8 thirds. So Jen needs 8 1/3 size scoops of cheese for her 4 pans of ziti. Now, down on the bottom it says, what if she needed 10 pans of ziti instead of 4 pans of ziti? Wow, that is a lot of pans of ziti. So she would need 10 pans times 2/3 in each pan. So 10 times 2 times 1/3. So that would look like 20 times 1/3, which would give me 20 thirds. Oh man, that is a lot of cups of cheese. We won't always have pictures or models when we do math, but another way to visualize what we're doing is to use a number line. So on this number line in example 2, we're going to model multiples of 2/5. Remember, multiples are we're going to count by 2/5. So we're going to go 2/5 times 1, and then 2/5 times 2, and then 2/5 times 3, and we're going to show that on our number line. So here's our example, 1 times 2/5. That's our first jump. 1 times 2/5 is 2/5. Now 2 times 2/5, we have 2 groups of 2/5 is 4/5. And 3 times 2/5 is 6/5. Notice we're multiplying the whole number and the numerator. So 4 times 2 is 8/5. And 5 times 2 is 10/5. So here on our bottom line, this was 8/5. 4 times 2 is 8/5, and 5 times 2 is 10/5. So our multiples of counting by 2/5, now we're not just counting by 1/5 at a time, we're counting by groups of 2/5, are 2/5 and 4/5 and 6/5 and 8/5 and 10/5. So 2, 4/5, 6/5, 8/5, and 10/5. Let's think about this as 3 times 2/5. So we counted by 2/5, and here's our 3 times 2/5 up here. 3 times 2/5, we said, is 6/5. So let's write 6/5 as a product of a whole number and a unit fraction. Well, if we have 6/5, then that would be the same. Here's our 6/5. That would be the same as saying 6 times 1/5. So like I said, you're multiplying the two numerators. 3 times 2 is 6. All right, underneath there's a question again. It says, how would we use a repeated addition to show the multiple of a fraction as well as a multiple of a whole number and a unit fraction? Well, we would want to say that each one is a sum. So let's use our example of 6/5 from up above here. Well, repeated addition would tell us that that is 6 groups of 1/5. So that would be 1/5 plus 1/5 plus 1/5 plus 1/5. That's 4 of them, 2 more, plus 1/5 plus 1/5. But that's a lot to write out. So instead of writing it as repeated addition, we write it as multiplication of a whole number, there are 6 of them, times a unit fraction, 6/5, similar to what we did yesterday. We will continue on with the share and show section tomorrow in class. You're almost finished. When you have everything written down, go back to your teacher's website and complete the exit slip. See you tomorrow.